Alright, so Rick Perry pedobang. Alright, so my slaves all of a sudden had some convention in the springtime of 2017 while I was busy researching why the fuck my slaves were going to Red Rocks and pedobang. Okay, that was the reason. See, the slaves here, they're not allowed to do that ever again. And so, one of the things that I know how to do is to basically be at the right place and right time to basically make their whole AI that covers up all of this stuff be exposing everything. And so that's what they get because they already had their pedobang cover up from the 1980s. And now there's a balance. There's a balance, which is called exposure. And that those stupid fucking slaves are not allowed to ever do that shit again. So let me give you a theoretics of what pedobang corps are. A lot of times they'll have like keywords like this. And that, much like I was talking about with the interpretive like postings that these child traffickers use on Similar Worlds, these people utilize similar like interpretive keywords that relate back to a basic key. And that's as follows. See, they do things in this way for a specific reason because the pedobang corps that do the skull CIA shit, they follow words and that builds their reasonings for being at certain places. It's meant to build difficult, it's like difficult to figure out their logic system to where they're going to be blackmailing at, okay? But if you know the pedobang keys, then you can start to understand where and why and stuff like that, okay? So Rockwell, that is essentially a Skull CIA pedobang corp out of the Manhattan Project. So Rock itself, the key to this stuff is the prairie. So at a prairie there's a tree, and then you place a wooden stump in front, and then you have a clay pot to the side of that, and then opposed to the log or whatever is a metal pan, and then if you're looking at the wooden stump to the right of that will be a heart rock. So this is government block or green. So rock derives out of a government-built corporation. Well represents a well or the bottom, going all the way to the bottom. And what that means is going all the way to the bottom or the middle of the well. It means fuck clubbing all the way. It means doing all of it. So, Red Rocks, the theoretical reasonings for choosing that is that the red rock in their pedobang reasonings and shit means to go from red to rock. And then after that, essentially what you had was a rainbow gathering at the same area where Mormons and essentially Nazis, neo-Nazi sick fucks and child trafficking pedos and weird masochistic weird fucking crazy pedophiles, they come afterward doing these rituals at this spot. And that essentially what you have here is black ops, where these would have been devoided theoretical from their theoretical, like, essentially the group itself, like these would represent somewhat of the blackmail extortion hackers that would be targeting Hanford, and that these would be the insider ways to be off of their list. And so, essentially, at Vegas, they established the pedobang standard of what rituals to do at one time. And then at, at the camps and stuff, essentially what people were doing was this or this. And so, if you were part of the Russian meddling type of hacking, collection of blackmails and targeting VIP kind of stuff, pedo sealing, torture silencing, that's this realm. And then if you're part of the espionage, like rip off of and rebuild of this type of corporation, then you would have been at this event. And that is where the reality is that once the pedobang corp does the well, then they're not ever allowed to do the pedobangs under the pedobang terms ever again. And so what I found was that Rockwell had a convention out at the Red Rocks Casino where right next to the Red Rock Casino is the Summerlin Academy or Doral Academy, and right behind that is a very small formation of red rocks that has what's called Stairway to Heaven. And it's a formation that has been utilized for this type of stuff for a long time. And it's like you can drive right up to it, and that is where people were at the casino, and then they were going to that location. And then on 420, these people essentially show up, and then they do a rainbow gathering. But see, this stuff wouldn't have been available to them to do. Because essentially they would have needed Satan and Satan Witch to be able to do this stuff. It's like all of this stuff is theoretically doable without people like myself with these scars. These are like the rules. This is like the rules that they have to follow for this stuff. And so when you see these words like fire eyes and shit like that, fire is orange. And then that would be like clay, that would be like this orange, yellow, green, and blue. They always do 4. And so that is like, here's the basic key to understanding what kind of extortions and what kind of events they go to. See, these pedobang corps are becoming the liability in most ways. See, they don't talk. They'll have these little stupid little fucking retards that'll be so afraid of not being able to make the event happen and to be keeping the security, cybersecurity on it and shit. that they won't tell them. Nobody talks about it. And then they end up pedobanging into stuff that's not actually controlled by Skull's CIA, basically. I mean, this is where those kind of Ivy societies used to just hold all that stuff in a vault, kind of. Now, they're not necessarily able to do that because a lot of those people you can't tube Jew. And that the like whole weird QAnon slash like this would be QAnon, and then this would be like Megan or whatever. Yeah. Their whole theoretic is to two Jew Ronald Reagan, okay? And that this is the type of stuff that they can't, some of these people have been around or have done that stuff already. And you can't to Jew these rituals. The skull and bones shit. Those people, they get their initiation into their secret society frat, and then they basically pedobang or something, and then they're supposed to never fucking do it ever again. And so what you're seeing is people that didn't seem to realize that the sins of the past are documented into these AIs that they use for this stuff. And since nobody talks, there's like a serious lack of knowledge about this shit. And that then all these people are like, I mean, here's Russian, Chinese slaves. Here's Nazi slaves. And here's the new emerging like Islamic terrorism slaves. And that when you do that stuff, these people set up the cameras for that stuff in a dark web that they have, and that the whole theoretic to this stuff was to always be keeping it from those people. And so they were literally uploading directly to their collection sites. And that essentially, since they were too Jewing, that's where Satan gets the two Jew the collection. And then that's where it filters into Black Ops. To where in the end, Black Ops essentially sees it. It has a viewing ability of it. But these groups have the direct extortion ability. And that stuff comes commanded from essentially what is Putin, China, and Nazis, and Islamic terrorism. They're not allowed to extort people until commanded or something by those organizations and stuff. So this is where I don't ever trust these fuckcocker corporations at all. I mean, here's a corporation that when it comes to the severance kind of stuff, they would fall into like a company that would kind of be, they wouldn't necessarily have been doing it, but those type of people came by my trailer park in this town when I was a kid, and that's what got them kind of pushed out. But that the severance lumen, that lumen basically like one of these two-word pedobang corps that two Jews then they're forced to be like really dumb at science and shit and economics and government relations and I mean it just is it's bad at trainings and low moral character and promoting people with low moral character and having really shitty interpretations of law and having forms of really psychotic forms of medical kind of realms and shit. That's the kind of stuff that arises even with these companies. It's a theoretical satanic corporation. That's what it kind of is. Lumen is like what I'm saying is like when you see them 3D printing like a fucking bull with a bunch of glazed over people, that is like a really exaggerated form. But that's the kind of like theming theoretic that comes from these kind of companies that essentially get extorted into being dumb. And see, the Rick Perry pedobang land would have, that is where Don and Rick, they're full Reagan, like, insiders and bringing back banging in the 80s, like, they would have wanted Rockwell to be taken over the Hanford side again. And that they would have had some sort of theoretical idea on pushing out. Like, think about, like, Rockwell, when it comes to Hanford, it, like, transferred over to Fleur, and Westinghouse and stuff. Those are basically, like, those were an attempt to be maintaining, like, a corporate segue of the same with another major, like, corporation. But essentially, it turned into what you would do with a monopoly company, and you would bust them up. And that's why you see that it's like CHPRC, which is a subdivision of CH2M Hill, and then this MSA stuff, and Allied, I think it has something, this Mission Support Alliance, and then like more subcontractors taking over the main contracts is kind of, and so that's where they took out the primary main kind of top levels contractor companies and then made subcontractor groups the primary contractors, and that's essentially where these kind of companies, they don't like it when people do that because they like to be the middleman for all that stuff. And so essentially the stuff that happened at like PFP and stuff would have run into a justification of reestablishing uh, what would be the Republicans' like top Fortune 500 company kind of shit, where they would want a Lockheed, okay, instead of some group that now they sit around they would probably justify in pushing out CH and then reestablishing a Cold War Lockheed style company, okay? That's typical of the Reagan ways of doing subcontracting. They like to isolate everything up to the major, massive subcontractors. That's their theoretical approach to defense and DOE. And that essentially there's somewhat of a justification, but not, this is where I don't necessarily view this company. My thought was to get the like company that can't do any of that stuff that essentially represents similar idea, a Ramco. See, they can't do this stuff, And Aramco's the Saud's CIA corp that runs energy. And that they can't do this stuff. And so then what you'll get from that is people that pretty much are held to a high moral standard forcefully in the Saud's oil industry, okay? So that's why I was pushing for Aramco, because whether you can see this stuff or not, subversively, that stuff that they do becomes what the problems that they're forced to be pushed into. You can eliminate that in certain ways by choosing a pretty high probability, like, corporation, not the China division. That'll probably be an extreme diametric balance. It would be about bringing literally a Aramco in Saudi Arabia, those people, and having them be the main contractor over Hanford. Okay, so that is where I was envisioning some solutions, because this type of stuff is where the unions and the people that worked in the 80s, they don't necessarily like Rockwell. Some do, some don't. And then DLD, they basically pushed Rockwell out. And then they brought in Westinghouse, who makes the microwaves for NASA. That would have been their, like, smart balance. The people that made the microwaves for NASA and TVs and shit and antennas and stuff. And so, but still, you know, that is kind of like where you never know about them either nowadays. But the Saud pretty much has like sneaky camera Pegasus eyes on everybody all over his country. Everybody knows that. That has a very, like, it builds a defensiveness to people doing this type of blackmailing and stuff. So that is where, you know, in the end, you kind of have to be a CIA-ish corporation anyways to do those contracts. And that then, I mean, Aramco is full CIA oil company. It is. And so these are kind of the checklist parameters. And then it's like, nobody, you know, my friend, he worked for like the museum over there. He wouldn't do anything bad. If he wanted to drink, he would have to go to Bahrain and shit. I mean, he might have had some booze secretly, but, you know, that's like where they'll probably know every single piece of pork he would have brought into the country and shit. They'll probably know every single, like, at-home beer making kit kind of stuff. They'll know every single thing that my friend was doing. If he had an affair, all that stuff. And then he would have known that you can't really do anything bad in that country because it's just everybody is monitored by the Saud's, like, agency work. Everybody knows that. And so that's where I envision that as, like, there's a company that's technically one of our CIA companies. And so then there's a lot of power. See, being in China, that's a bad place for any company to be. It is. You get targeted all the time. It doesn't matter who you are. Those people in Aramco, most of those people will be straight laced with no extortions, but his division over in China probably would have been highly targeted by Islamic terror for one, for being the Saud's oil company basically, and then also the Chinese target everybody with blackmailing also, and so to be in that company, in that division in China brings up a higher probability of like being extorted. So this is what I'm talking about. When I found this stuff where Mormon was essentially building a behind the scenes step in that attempts to build essentially what they're doing out at Hanford through espionage, hacking and shit, and then to be fine tuning it for another company to come stepping in. As when one company leaves, it's kind of like when the president leaves the White House and the new administration comes in from a different party. Basically. That's how, where they don't necessarily give you any of the data and shit like that, okay? So essentially, this is my theory, basically. Well, they were accessing the discussion system in my profile while I was sitting there at the Red Rocks. Right? So, next time they go around just getting into people's like profiles that has broadcasts illegally into somebody's speaker while they're busy doing something else, just remember, you people, I'm not your fucking slave, right? It's the other way around, bitch brains. You people are my slaves. You people came to my shit. I didn't blackmail as an adult. And now you people have to call me the man and the fucking wizard. And now you people are my fucking slaves. And so don't get into my fucking profile doing your guys' secret little fucking weird mission shit. Sick of it. Okay, it gets in my way. I'm busy doing something different. I don't give a fuck about your pedobang corp. I don't like Rick Perry. I don't like Republicans. I don't like fucking Mormons. I hate these fucking pedos and I hate these sick fucks. And I hate anybody who does this shit. I do like the ghouls. They're black ops. I like them. And that shit, they would use that for their stupid discussions. But I wouldn't care because that stuff gets white noised over. So that they can do their weird Iran Contra stuff. Honestly. And so that is like, well, I don't like you people just viewing other people in the fucking world as your extensions of what you need to get your fucking money and power in life. I don't give a fuck about you people. And that, yeah, nowadays I've gotten things all worked to where if you get into my fucking shit, then it dumps your fucking pedobangs out there. Then you can't do shit. And then everybody gets to sit around extorting you and shit. And then your whole point of doing all the fucking shit becomes fucking moot. Okay? And so, wake up, you guys. 2022. Okay? What year is fucking Wizard that year? Well, they do their weird number fuck brain shit. So, 2022. That ain't pedobanger years. You people are Nazi one people.